Welcome to Moon Mind. In this video, we enter one of the most profound teachings preserved in the oldest Buddhist texts, a quiet exchange between two men sitting beneath the same sky, speaking the same words, yet living in completely different worlds. One of them had done everything a person is taught to do. His cattle were safely enclosed. His harvest had been gathered and stored. His home was protected from the coming storm. His family rested in warmth beside the fire. He looked around at the life he had carefully built with years of labor, discipline, and devotion. Everything was in place. Everything was secure. And with deep satisfaction, he lifted his eyes toward the darkening clouds and said, "If you wish to reign, then reign." Nearby, another man heard those words. He too answered the sky. But his meaning came from an entirely different kind of wealth. His cattle were not animals, but the well-trained faculties of the mind. His shelter required no roof. Nothing from the outer world could break into the peace he had established within. And the fire that once consumed him had already gone out, the inner fire of craving, fear, attachment, and endless wanting. So he answered with the same calm words. "If you wish to reign, then reign." The sentence was identical. But the weight behind it was completely transformed. One man had secured everything he could hold. The other had gone beyond the need to hold anything at all. This ancient encounter, preserved in the Pali Canon, becomes the doorway for tonight's journey. Over the next 3 hours, we will walk through timeless Buddhist stories drawn from the oldest surviving teachings of the Buddha, slowly, carefully, and without hurry. You will hear of a monk who deliberately walked toward violent men, not because he lacked fear, but because fear no longer had anything inside him to cling to. You will meet a poet monk who became aware of pride arising from his own spiritual progress, sought guidance, noticed the pride returning, and humbly began again, repeating this process for years until wisdom deepened into genuine transformation. And beside a quiet river, you will encounter a teaching that completely reshapes what it means to be truly alone, not as isolation, but as freedom. Everything shared tonight comes directly from the Pali Canon, the oldest preserved record of the Buddha's words. These teachings remain as precise now as they were centuries ago. Calm, unhurried, and exact. So settle into wherever you are. Allow your shoulders to soften. Let the noise of the day fall away. If you'd like, share in the comments where in the world you are listening from tonight. Take in these stories at the pace your mind and body need. Now the story begins. The Mahi River flowed through wide open plains, moving quietly past fields and grazing land. Along its banks lived a man named Dhaniya, a cattle keeper whose life had become everything he once hoped it would be. His animals were healthy and strong, well fed through the harsh dry season, now resting safely inside an enclosure built by his own hands. It had taken effort, patience, and years of responsibility to create this security. His home was tightly thatched against the monsoon rains. His grain was stored. The work of the season was complete. Inside, his wife and children sat close to the warmth of the evening fire, held in that rare peace that comes after a full day's labor has ended and before tomorrow's demands have begun. But his satisfaction went deeper than comfort. This was not the ease of luck. This was the fulfillment of intention. He had cared for calves and aging cattle alike. He had met every duty placed before him. No debts remained unpaid. No promises had been left behind. No unfinished burdens waited in the dark corners of his mind. Everything had been earned. The monk stepped closer to the riverbank, his presence quiet enough to be mistaken for the evening itself. He had no herd to guard. No grain to protect. No house waiting behind him. And yet there was a stillness in him far greater than the comfort surrounding the cattle keeper. He stood beneath the same clouds, listening to the low murmur of the river and the distant sound of animals settling for the night. Then he spoke. "My mind is disciplined. My senses are guarded. My heart is freed from the fires that once burned within it. If the sky wishes to rain, let it rain. The words drifted into the darkness like a bell struck once in an empty valley. Dhanya turned toward the wandering monk. At first, he saw only what the world usually notices. A man with no possessions. No visible wealth. No walls. No family gathered around a fire. And yet something in the monk's voice carried a confidence deeper than ownership. This was not the confidence of a man who had secured favorable conditions. It was the peace of someone who no longer depended on conditions at all. Dhanya had spent years building safety from the outside in. Fences. Food. Shelter. Routine. Responsibility. The monk had built something invisible. A refuge no storm could touch. For a moment, the cattle keeper looked again at everything around him, the enclosure, the grain, the glowing firelight, the faces of those he loved. He realized how much of his peace rested on things staying exactly as they were. No flood. No disease. No thieves. No drought. No death. His calm depended on the world agreeing with him. The monk's calm asked nothing from the world. The clouds thickened above them. A low rumble of thunder rolled across the plains, distant but certain. The river wind shifted, carrying the scent of wet earth before the first drop had even fallen. Dhanya spoke again, though this time his voice carried less certainty and more curiosity. How can a man rest without securing what must be secured? How can peace survive when there is nothing to protect it? The monk looked toward the dark sky and answered with the gentleness of someone describing something already present. Because what must truly be protected is not outside. The outer world changes by its nature. Fields dry. Roofs collapse. Bodies age. Those we love come close and one day move beyond our reach. If peace depends on what changes, then peace itself must keep changing. The first drops of rain touched the dust. Small at first. Soft enough to disappear into the ground without sound. The monk continued. But when the mind is trained. When craving loosens. When fear no longer finds a place to settle. Then peace is not borrowed from circumstances. It arises from understanding. The rain began to fall more steadily now. Dhanya watched the storm gather strength, and for the first time that evening, he saw his own life from a different height. Everything he trusted was real. Everything he had built mattered. But none of it was permanent. The fences would eventually break. The harvest would be consumed. The fire would turn to ash. Even the family gathered close would one day follow their own paths into change. For years, he had mistaken temporary stability for lasting safety. Now, standing before the monk, he sensed another possibility. A kind of freedom that did not vanish when conditions changed. Lightning flashed far across the plains. For a brief instant, the river, the fields, the cattle, and both men were illuminated in a single white silence. Then darkness returned, deeper than before. And with it came understanding. The monk was not rejecting the world. He was revealing its nature. To care for life is wise. To build responsibly is noble. But suffering begins when we demand permanence from what was never meant to stay. Rain now fell in full. It struck the river in countless circles. Tapped against the thatched roof. Ran down the fences Dhanya had worked so hard to build. He listened. Outside, the storm moved through the night. Inside, another storm had begun to quiet. Something in him softened. The pride of ownership. The illusion of control. The belief that enough preparation could make life unchanging. For the first time, he understood why the monk could say the same words with such freedom. If you wish to reign, then reign. One sentence spoken from possession becomes confidence. The same sentence spoken from awakening becomes liberation. And somewhere beneath the sound of the rain, the deeper lesson of the Buddha began to emerge. True peace is not the protection of what you own. It is the ending of the inner fire that makes you believe you need ownership to be whole.